Welcome back to Dark Horror Stories. In today's episode, I'm sharing 9 true disturbing stories from warehouses. These are tales of people who ventured into massive storage buildings and found something they were never meant to see. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Story 1. Night warehouses have their own weather. Even if it's bone dry outside, the air in there has this cold, recycled dampness to it, like the building is breathing through a dirty filter. The one I worked at sat off a service road behind an industrial park, all chain link and gravel, with sodium lights that made every puddle look like old brass. I took the overnight security job because I was broke and because I liked being alone, which, looking back, feels like admitting I walked into it with my arms open. It was simple work. Check doors, log trucks, watch cameras, drink coffee that tasted faintly of the cardboard cup. The only thing anyone ever said to me about the place was the day supervisor, Darla Payson, sort of half laughed and told me, "If you hear your name, no you didn't." She said it like it was a joke you'd say to a kid before turning off the lights. I laughed too. I remember thinking she must have been messing with the new guy. My first week was boring. I learned which loading bay door stuck unless you shoulder checked it. I learned the vending machine ate bills but would accept coins if you warmed them in your hand first. I learned the microwave in the break room ran hot on the left side, so my ramen would go volcanic in one corner and cold in the other. I learned one of the forklifts had a squeal that sounded like someone stepping on a dog toy. Nothing spooky, just warehouse stuff. The building itself was a big rectangle with high racks, pallets stacked like cliff faces, and long, dead straight aisles that made you feel tiny. At night, the motion lights would blink on in sections, so you'd be walking through darkness and then suddenly be in this harsh white pool like you'd been spotlighted. I think it was a Tuesday or maybe Wednesday. I only remember because I'd brought a leftover breakfast burrito and the egg smell was making me regret my life choices. Around 2:10 a.m., one of the cameras in the far back corner flickered. Not fully out, just this jittery shimmer, like the signal was skipping. It was camera 14 covering aisle Q and the dead end where the shrink wrap station was. I told myself it was normal, old wiring, a loose connection. I'd already seen a couple cameras do that when the big refrigeration unit kicked on. But then on the monitor, I watched the motion lights in that area turn on in sequence. Not random, not one section popping and then dying. It was like something was walking the aisle, tripping each sensor, click, 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 moving steadily toward the back wall. I leaned closer to the screen. My brain did that thing where it tries to solve it like a puzzle instead of letting you feel scared. A raccoon got in, a cat, a plastic bag drifting in the air current, except the lights were triggering at shoulder height. I remember saying out loud to nobody, "Okay, great, awesome." Protocol said I should investigate. The radios were mostly for show. Night shift had, 3 people total including me, and the other 2 were in shipping doing inventory. If something happened, you called 911 and hoped the dispatcher didn't laugh when you said warehouse. So I grabbed my flashlight, the heavy aluminum one they give you so you feel tougher, and my keys, and I went. The warehouse swallowed sound. My boots scuffed on concrete, and the echo made it sound like somebody was walking a step behind me. I tried to set a rhythm that would prove it was only my own noise. I also tried not to look at the racks too long because if you stare down those aisles, your eyes start making shapes. Halfway back, I smelled something that didn't belong, not rot exactly, more like wet pennies and that sweet chemical stink you get when you open a new shower curtain. I told myself it was cleaning supplies. The place stored a lot of random stuff. Then I heard my name, not shouted, not whispered, just spoken in a normal tone like someone had leaned close to my ear. "Evan." My whole back tightened. I stopped so fast my keys jingled in my pocket. I remember the stupid detail that my tongue felt coated like I'd been chewing gum too long. I waited for the obvious explanation. One of the inventory guys playing around, a radio squawk sounding like speech. My own brain misfiring because it was 2 a.m. and I ate an egg burrito like an idiot. But the aisle lights ahead of me clicked on again. One section, then the next. "Evan," it said again, slightly farther away. Like it was learning distance. I did what people do when they want to be brave without committing to it. I called out, "Darla, is that you?" Even though Darla wasn't there at night and I knew it, no answer. I walked slower after that. My flashlight beam caught dust floating like tiny insects. The racks on either side were shrink-wrapped stacks of boxed product, pale and squared and anonymous, all the same branding, like a city of identical apartments. As I got close to aisle Q, the smell intensified. Wet pennies, plastic, something underneath that, like when you leave a sponge in a sink too long. And this is the part that still turns my stomach when I think about it. I saw movement not in the aisle, but between the boxes on the rack. There was a gap in the shrink wrap, maybe the size of a dinner plate, torn open like a mouth. And in that dark gap, something pale pressed forward. At first I thought it was a hand, like somebody had gotten stuck and was reaching out. But it wasn't a hand. It was skin, smooth and almost translucent, stretching tight over something that had the wrong shape under it. The surface bulged and shifted, as if whatever was behind it was trying to decide how to fit through. I swung my light onto it and the skin reacted. It rippled like goose flesh moving in waves. Then something slid forward in that hole, an eye, except I don't know what else to call it, but it wasn't set into a face. It was just an eye-shaped wetness appearing under the skin, as if the skin itself was becoming an eye. It turned toward my flashlight beam, no blink, just that wet, reflective stare. That was the moment my rational part fell apart. Up until then I'd been stacking explanations like sandbags. After that I had nothing. I backed up, slow, trying not to make a sound. My flashlight shook enough that the beam jittered across the floor. And the voice, my name, came again, but this time it came from the rack itself, muffled, like someone speaking through layers of plastic. "Evan." I should have run then, I know that, but my feet did that freezing thing like they were waiting for my brain to give them permission. The shrink wrap around the pallet began to tighten. That's the only way I can describe it, like it was being pulled from the inside. The plastic strained, creaked, and the boxed corners dented inward as if something was bracing against them. Then the iconic, impossible detail, the one I can't make anyone understand without sounding insane. A seam appeared down the middle of the plastic wrap, perfectly straight, and it unzipped itself from top to bottom like an invisible hand was opening a zipper. No tearing, no ripping, just a clean opening and the plastic folded back in two neat flaps. Something inside breathed out. The air that came out had weight to it. It hit my face like a humid exhale from a mouth too close. The smell was worse. And in that opening, a shape leaned forward, humanoidish but wrong in the proportions, like someone drew a person from memory while half asleep. Its shoulders were narrow. Its arms were too long, but not in that lanky horror movie way, more like the joints were misplaced, so the forearms started too low. The skin looked like the underside of a mushroom, and when it moved, it didn't step. It slid a little as if the floor had no friction for it. I saw its head only for a second. It wasn't bald like you'd expect. It had something like a film over it, a thin, tight layer, and underneath that I could see darker lines like veins in a leaf. Then it spoke again, same calm tone, and it used my name like it had always known it. I turned and ran. I didn't sprint down the aisle like an action hero. I stumbled. My boot caught a pallet jack handle and I almost face-planted. I heard plastic behind me, a rapid crinkling like 100 shopping bags being shaken. Lights clicked on ahead of me as I crossed sensors, making that harsh corridor of white that felt like it was pushing me forward. I risked a glance back. Something was moving through the aisle, but it wasn't centered. It was hugging the racks, and where it passed, the shrink wrap on other pallets began to pull and stretch toward it like static cling. Boxes shifted inside plastic. Tape lifted at corners. The whole aisle looked like it was being drawn into a slow current. I hit my radio button with my thumb so hard it hurt. "Shipping, this is Evan," my voice cracked. "You guys back there, you do not come back here. Lock yourselves in the office. I'm calling." The radio hissed. Then in my own voice, perfectly matched, same cracked panic, it repeated, "Shipping, this is Evan." I almost dropped the radio. That's when the fear went from, "There's something here," to "It can use me." I kept running until I reached the main corridor near the front bays. The building felt different there, more open, more normal. The cameras were mounted lower. The exit signs glowed green. I could see the security office door with its small window like it was salvation, but the motion lights behind me began popping on again, marching toward me. I got into the office and slammed the door. My hands were shaking so bad I fumbled the deadbolt twice. Then I backed into the corner by the desk, flashlight up, like that would help. The building went quiet in that way big buildings do, where you can hear the electrical hum in the walls. Then came the tapping, not on the door, not on the glass, on the metal frame of the office from the inside of the wall. A slow, measured pattern like someone counting. Tap it, tap it, tap, tap, tap. I told myself it was settling metal. Pipes cooling, the building shifting. The tapping moved upward, traveling as if something was climbing inside the wall. A soft sound came through the vent above the door, like plastic being gently rubbed between fingers. I looked up. A thin strip of shrink wrap slid out of the vent like a tongue. It dangled, quivering, and then, God, I hate this, formed into a shape that looked like the end of a finger. Not a finger exactly. A suggestion of one, rounded, pale, wet. It tapped the vent grill once as if testing it. I backed away until my shoulders hit the filing cabinet. My heart was doing that painful hammering that makes you feel like you might throw up. I don't remember deciding to do it, but I grabbed the fire extinguisher off the wall. I kept my eyes on that vent and pulled the pin with my teeth like I'd seen in movies, which is so stupid and dramatic, but I didn't know what else to do. The finger shape withdrew. The strip of plastic slid back into darkness. Then the voice, my voice again, came from the hallway just outside the office. "It's fine," it said, "calm now, open up." I didn't answer, I didn't breathe. A shadow crossed the little window in the door, but it wasn't shaped like a person standing there. It was too close, too flat, like something pressed itself against the glass from inches away. And slowly across the glass, condensation formed from the inside, as if someone was breathing on it, except the breath pattern wasn't mouth-sized. It spread across the entire window in a wide oval, like the window itself exhaled. In the fog, letters appeared, traced from the other side. EVAN. I screamed, not proud of it, I just did. The letters smeared as something dragged across the window, and then the office lights flickered. The monitors blinked out and back. In the second they were off, I heard the warehouse, like all of it, crinkle at once, a wave of plastic sound rolling through aisles. Then, abruptly, everything went still, no tapping. No voice, no motion, lights triggering. I waited like that for, honestly, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour. Time got slippery. My extinguisher felt heavy in my hands. My palms were slick on the handle. Eventually, I called 911 and tried to explain without sounding insane. I said there was an intruder. I said the building was unsafe. I didn't say anything about shrink-wrapped fingers. Cops came. They walked the aisles with flashlights. They found nothing. No forced doors. No broken pallets. Just me sweating through my uniform shirt like I'd run a marathon. They told me to go home, and they stayed for a bit, and when the sun started paling the windows, they left too. The warehouse looked normal in daylight, which felt like the cruelest trick. Here's the aftermath proof, the thing that keeps me from ever fully convincing myself I imagined it. When I came back 2 days later to turn in my keys, I didn't quit on the spot because I needed my last check, and also I think I was still in shock. I went to my locker. I'd left my jacket there that night. Inside the pocket was a strip of shrink wrap, not from any pallet I recognized. It was thicker, almost rubbery, and on it, pressed into the plastic like a fingerprint, was a pattern of tiny ridges, except the ridges ran in spirals like tree rings, not like any human print. I threw it away in the parking lot trash and then went back and dug it out because I couldn't stand not knowing I still had it. I kept it in a Ziploc bag for a year. I don't know why. Proof. A reminder. Punishment. I don't work nights anymore. I can't stand the sound of plastic bags rustling in a grocery store. And sometimes, when I'm alone and my phone rings from an unknown number, I get this ridiculous urge to answer and say my name first, like that would keep it from using it. Story 2. The warehouse in Story 2 is where I learned that forklifts don't feel like machines at night. They feel like animals you're borrowing. It was a cold storage place, the kind that keeps the air just above freezing even in summer, and the walls sweat constantly. You'd walk in and your eyelashes would collect moisture. Your breath would fog your safety glasses. Everything smelled like pallets and cold metal and faintly like oranges because we handled a lot of citrus. I took that job because my friend Janelle Vaught said the night differential was worth it. It's boring, she told me, and she was the kind of person who could make even boredom sound like a perk. I trusted her. Also, I needed rent money fast, and they hired me without asking too many questions. Before anything happened, I remember stupid details. The way the break room clock always ran 3 minutes fast, like it was trying to push us toward quitting time. The green tape on the floor that never stayed stuck in the corners. The tiny space heater someone had hidden under the sink, even though it was definitely against policy. The taste of peppermint gum mixing with freezer air until it felt like my mouth was full of menthol ice. Our supervisor at night was a guy named Orson Lively, and he had this habit of whistling the same 3 notes over and over. Not a tune, just 3 notes, like a bird with one idea. The first weird thing happened after midnight. I was picking orders in the back section where the racks were taller and the lights buzzed louder. My scanner kept losing connection, flashing, retry, like it was annoyed at me. Janelle was 2 aisles over, singing under her breath to keep herself awake. I heard a pallet shift behind me. That's normal. Wood settles, air moves. Forklifts bump things. I told myself that right away. I even said it out loud, like narrating would make it less creepy. But then I heard it again, slow, deliberate, like someone sliding a pallet a few inches at a time. I turned and shined my headlamp down the aisle. Nothing, just the long tunnel of racks and shrink-wrapped product, the floor scuffed with tire marks. My scanner beeped, impatient. I went back to work, and then the overhead lights in my aisle dimmed. Not off, just dimmed, like someone turned them down on a dial. The buzzing dropped pitch. My breath looked thicker in the colder air. I checked my watch. It was still working. The clock at the end of the aisle, those big digital ones, glitched, showing 88 for a second before correcting. I told myself it was a power fluctuation, and then from the far end of the aisle I heard Orson's whistle. The same 3 notes. Only Orson didn't whistle in the back. He stayed up front near the docks. He hated the cold. I stepped out into the cross aisle and called, "Orson." My voice sounded flat in the refrigerated air. No answer. The whistle repeated, closer now, but wrong. Like someone had heard it once and was trying to do it from memory with a mouth that didn't quite work the same way. I started walking toward it because curiosity is a disease, apparently. Half of me was like, it's probably Janelle messing with you. The other half, my stomach half, felt heavy. As I got closer to the aisle end, I noticed the floor was wet, not puddles. A sheen, like condensation, had fallen there, but only in a narrow strip. I crouched and touched it with my glove. It wasn't water, it was slicker, almost oily, and it had a faint smell like old meat wrappers left in the sun. I stood up fast, wiping my glove on my pants, even though that did nothing. The whistle stopped. In the silence, I heard something behind the boxes on the rack to my right. A soft, wet shifting, like something moving through packing foam. I shined my lamp into the gap between pallets. Something looked back, not eyes. I know you're expecting me to say eyes, but it wasn't that. It was like two glossy knots in a stretched surface, reflecting light the way frozen grapes do when you pull them from a bag. The surface around the knots flexed as if it was trying to focus. I took a step back and the forklift behind me parked off, clicked. Just one click, like a relay switch. The forklift's headlights blinked on. My first thought was electrical issue. Cold makes batteries weird. I told myself that immediately, clinging to it. Then the forklift's steering wheel turned on its own. Slow, smooth, like a hand rotating it, and the horn, without being pressed, let out one short beep. I froze so hard my teeth hurt. The forklift rolled forward a foot. I heard a sound above me, metal groaning, and looked up to see a pallet on the top rack shifting, inching outward like it was being pushed. That's when I finally yelled for Janelle. She came running, breath puffing, hair tucked into her hat. "What?" she said, annoyed and worried at the same time. I pointed. My hand was shaking so much it looked like I was gesturing wildly at nothing. The forklift's lights flickered. The steering wheel snapped back to center, and the whistle started again, but now it came from inside the forklift, from the cab, like someone was sitting there with their lips close to the steering column. Janelle's face changed. She didn't laugh. She didn't ask if I was messing around. She just whispered, "Nope." We backed away together. The forklift followed, not fast, not charging, just rolling in little pulses, stopping and starting as if it had to remember how wheels worked. And the iconic moment, that one sentence people always make me repeat when I tell this story, is when the forklift's seatbelt unlatched itself and slithered out of the cab, dragging along the floor like a black tongue, buckling and unbuckling as it moved. Janelle grabbed my wrist and we ran. We didn't take the straight path to the front because the forklift was in the main cross aisle now, blocking it in this slow, casual way that felt intentional. We ducked between racks, weaving through aisles, our boots slipping on that oily sheen that kept appearing in patches. At one point, we stopped behind a stack of boxed oranges and just listened. The whistle drifted past. The forklift's tires squeaked. And underneath it all, that wet shifting sound, like something inside the racks was moving along with us. Janelle mouthed, "Office." We moved low and fast, like we were sneaking past a sleeping animal. The cold stung my lungs. My scanner banged against my thigh with every step. We made it to the supervisor's office near the docks and slammed the door. Orson was there, sitting at the desk, eating microwaved chili out of a styrofoam cup. He looked up like we'd interrupted him mid-thought. "What is wrong with you two?" he said. We tried to explain. We sounded ridiculous, even to ourselves. Orson stood annoyed and followed us to the window that looked onto the warehouse floor. The forklift sat in the aisle, lights off now, perfectly still, like it had never moved. Orson stared for a long time. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. He said, "Which one of you was whistling?" We both said we were. He didn't look at us. He just kept watching the forklift. After a minute, the forklift's horn beeped once, soft, almost polite. Orson's face went pale in this slow, reluctant way, like he'd been hoping he'd never see that again. He told us to clock out. No argument, no write-up, just go home. We did. The aftermath proof happened the next day. I went back for my jacket because I'd left it in my locker, and I didn't want to go in alone, so I brought my cousin, Melina Sato, to wait in the car like a guard dog. I opened my locker and my jacket was there, but the inside lining had been punctured in 3 neat holes, like something had pressed hot fingers through it. The fabric around the holes was stiff, as if it had been melted slightly. And the zipper pull, this is small, but it's what convinced me, had been twisted into a tight spiral, like someone had taken pliers to it and wound it around itself. Nobody could have done that by accident. I quit that week. Janelle quit too. Orson stayed. I don't know why. Maybe he needed the money more than we did. Or maybe he'd already made peace with being whistled at by things that don't have lungs. Story 3. I'll be honest, I didn't even think of it as a warehouse at first. It was the storage building, like a big metal barn behind my aunt's property, sitting out in a flat stretch of land where the wind had nothing to bump into except old machinery. It was one of those places you inherit without inheriting, if you know what I mean. My Aunt Colette Maris passed, and suddenly I was the one who had to deal with the stuff nobody wanted to look at. Boxes of holiday decorations, furniture wrapped in moving blankets, old lawn chairs, a canoe upside down on sawhorses for no reason. She'd rented part of the building out years ago to a guy who stored inventory for his online business, but by the time I got there, his padlock was gone and the space was supposedly empty. I went out there at night because I thought it would be cooler. That's the truth. It was July, hot enough during the day that the air felt like wet cloth. I figured I'd take a flashlight, sort a few boxes, maybe find paperwork and be done. Before anything weird, I remember mundane junk. A moth thumping itself against my headlamp, the way the gravel outside made a crunch like biting sugar, the smell of mouse droppings mixed with old pine cleaner, the fact that my phone kept slipping out of my back pocket because my jeans were stretched out, the tiny mercy of a cold soda sweating in my hand. The building had 2 sections. The front was open storage with workbenches. The back was the rented area, divided by a plywood wall with a door cut into it. The door had a hasp where the padlock used to be. I told myself I'd just peek in to see if anything was left behind. The flashlight beam hit the plywood and I saw scratch marks around the doorframe, fresh looking like someone had raked it with a key. That made me pause. I told myself it was a raccoon or somebody prying. The door creaked when I opened it. The air on the other side felt colder. Not refrigerated, but basement cold, even though the building didn't have a basement. The back section was empty of inventory like they said. Mostly, there were scattered pallets and a single rolling chair tipped over on its side and a bunch of shipping labels stuck to the wall like dead leaves. And the floor was wrong. It looked like concrete, but it had a faint pattern to it like waves, like someone had poured it and it had settled unevenly. My light moved over it and the shadows made it look like the floor was breathing. I stood there too long trying to decide if my eyes were playing tricks. That's a theme in these stories, I guess. Then I heard a sound from the far corner, a dry rhythmic clicking, like someone tapping a fingernail on plastic. I turned the flashlight toward it and saw nothing at first, just the corner where the wall met the floor. Then something moved along the seam, not crawling up the wall, sliding along the line where wall and floor met like it was a crack it could fit through. A pale shape appeared, thin, jointed. I thought insect for half a second, but it was too big. It had segments like a finger, but too many. It pulled itself out of the seam, followed by another and another until I realized I was looking at a hand, except it had 6 fingers, and the fingers weren't tipped with nails. They were tipped with little flattened pads like suction cups, but dry. My brain tried to rationalize so hard it almost made me laugh. Genetic deformity in an animal. A glove someone left. A prop. The hand pressed itself flat against the floor, then the wall like it was tasting surfaces. Then the rest of it began to come out of the seam. I only saw it properly once because my body finally decided to move. It was humanoid in the sense that it had a torso and limbs, but it was wrong in a way that made my stomach flip. Its ribs were visible under the skin like the slats of a broken umbrella, and its neck didn't hold a head so much as a soft oval mass that pulsed slightly, as if it was full of fluid, and it didn't step out into the room like a thing emerging. It peeled itself out like tape being pulled from an edge. The iconic moment, this is the sentence that still makes me feel stupid for even typing it, is that as it peeled out, the seam in the wall stretched open like a mouth, and you could see into the crack behind it, and the crack wasn't a crack at all. It was a long hallway of the same plywood and concrete, going away into darkness, as if the building had a hidden interior folded inside the wall. I stared into that hallway for a fraction of a second and saw something move far down it, another shape, waiting. That's when I ran. I didn't run toward the main door. I ran back through the plywood divider, slammed it behind me, and shoved a workbench in front of it because my brain went into block door mode like a trapped animal. I heard the clicking again, closer on the other side of the plywood, not against the door. Along the wall seam as if it didn't need the door. I grabbed my keys off the bench so hard they cut into my palm. My flashlight beam bounced around, catching dust and old tools and a dangling extension cord. The clicking traveled along the wall, following me. I could hear it like someone tapping a long baseboard as they walked, except there were too many taps, too fast, like multiple fingers. I bolted for the big sliding door at the front. It was heavy and usually stuck, because of course it was. I yanked. It moved an inch, then stopped. Behind me, the plywood wall bulged inward slightly, like something pressed its weight against it. I told myself it was wind. I told myself the building was settling. I told myself anything. Then a hand, 6 fingers, pushed through the gap at the bottom where the plywood met the floor. The suction pads scraped the concrete, leaving a faint, chalky residue. I screamed again. Another proud moment. I grabbed a crowbar off the tool rack and jammed it under the sliding door track and levered with my whole body. The door groaned and finally slid open enough for me to squeeze through. I fell out onto the gravel, skinning my knee. The night air outside felt warm and normal and full of crickets, which was such a relief it made my eyes sting. I got to my car and fumbled the keys, dropping them once. The engine turned over, then died, turned over, then died. In the rearview mirror, I saw the warehouse door move. Not open, just flex. Like the metal rippled inward for a moment, as if something inside pressed against it with a soft body. Then the building was still again. The car started on the 3rd try. I peeled out so hard the tires threw gravel. The aftermath proof came the next morning. I went back in daylight with my brother Tegan Roan because he didn't believe me and also because I needed him there so I wouldn't go alone. The plywood divider wall looked normal. No bulge, no stretched seam. But on the concrete floor in the back rented section, along the wall seam, there was a trail of chalky, oval prints, 6 in a cluster, repeating like the suction pads had left their shape behind, and the prints didn't stop at the corner or fade out. They went straight into the wall, ending abruptly at the seam as if the wall swallowed them. We stood there in silence. Tegan didn't tease me anymore after that. He just said very quietly, "We're not storing anything in here." I sold the property a few months later. I didn't mention the warehouse. I just said it was as is. And sometimes when I'm driving past storage buildings on the highway, I catch myself studying the seams where panels meet, imagining a hallway folded inside. Story 4. The distribution center I worked at was so big it had its own weather system. I swear. The air near the loading bays was always warmer because of the trucks coming and going, and the back half, where the returns were stacked, felt damp and stale like wet paper. I was doing night shift maintenance then, mostly fixing conveyor belts and replacing burnt-out bulbs. My coworker, Salim Khorsani, was the kind of guy who kept a tiny notebook of every repair he'd ever done, even if it was just tightened bolt. He said it helped him sleep. I used to make fun of him for it. That night, we were tasked with checking a conveyor line that kept stopping in one particular zone. The daytime crew said it was ghosting, which is warehouse slang for it stops, and we don't know why. They meant it as a joke. We walked the line with our tools. I remember 5 stupid details before anything happened. The smell of overheated rubber from the belt motor. A half-crushed granola bar wrapper stuck to the conveyor like a fossil. My sock sliding down inside my boot so it bunched at the toe. The way Salim's headlamp strap had a frayed thread he kept picking at, the sound of distant forklift beeps echoing like bird calls. The conveyor zone that ghosted was in returns, where customers sent back everything from blenders to baby monitors. It always felt haunted even without the supernatural, just because of all the random personal junk in boxes. We reached the spot where the belt stopped and looked up at the sensor array. It was a simple photo eye sensor, supposed to detect boxes passing. I checked wiring. Salim checked the mount. Nothing looked wrong. Then while we stood there, the conveyor belt started by itself. No alarm, no startup beep. It just started moving, slow at first, then steady. Boxes that had been sitting still began to slide along like they'd been patiently waiting. I frowned and said, "Did you hit the control?" Salim shook his head. "No." We both looked at the control panel. The start button wasn't lit. I told myself it was residual power, some automated sequence triggered remotely, a glitch. Then a box came down the belt that shouldn't have been there. It was a small cardboard box taped shut, no return label, no barcode, just plain brown cardboard, and something had written on the top in black marker, "Turn it over." I laughed once, sharp and nervous, because my brain still wanted it to be a prank. "Okay," I said, "very funny." But Salim didn't laugh. He stepped back like the box had teeth. The box stopped right in front of us, as if the conveyor knew exactly where we were standing. The belt kept moving beneath it, but the box didn't slide. It stayed fixed in place, like it had weight that wasn't physical weight. I reached out because I'm apparently incapable of learning and touched it. The cardboard was warm, not room temperature warm, body warm. I jerked my hand back. The belt stopped. Dead silence. In that quiet, we heard something beneath the conveyor line, a dragging sound like a heavy tarp being pulled along concrete. It moved parallel to us, always just under the metal frame, staying hidden. Salim whispered, "Don't." I should have listened. I didn't. I grabbed the box and flipped it. On the bottom, pressed into the cardboard like an imprint, was a perfect human face, not a picture, not a drawing. Like someone had pushed their face into wet clay and the cardboard had remembered it. Nose, lips, closed eyelids. And the lips were slightly parted and the indentation was deep enough that it looked like it could breathe. That's my iconic moment for this one, a face in cardboard. I can still see the grain of it. I dropped the box like it burned me. The dragging sound beneath the conveyor stopped. Then, slowly from the dark gap between rollers, a hand reached up. It wasn't a normal hand. It was too flat, like it had been pressed thin. The fingers were wide, almost paddle-like, and they flexed with a dry creaking sound like bending stiff leather. The hand tapped the conveyor frame twice, tap, tap, like it was checking the metal. Salim grabbed my arm and yanked me back so hard I stumbled. The hand withdrew. Then the conveyor belt started again, faster this time. Boxes began moving, and the plain box with the face imprint rode the belt away, disappearing into the darkness of the line like it belonged there. We didn't chase it. We didn't touch the controls. We backed away like you back away from an aggressive dog. We went to the maintenance office and locked the door. Salim sat down and opened his notebook with shaking hands. I watched him write something, slowly, carefully, like writing could keep him from falling apart. "What did you write?" I asked. He didn't look up. "I wrote," he said, "that we replaced nothing." The aftermath proof came at dawn when the day supervisor came in and asked why the conveyor was shut down. We tried to explain without sounding insane. We said there was a safety issue. We said we saw something. They checked the line and found the plain box again, sitting on a pallet in returns like it had always been there. Only now the top didn't say "turn it over." Now it had our names, not first names, full names, mine and Salim's spelled correctly. Neither of us had ever written our full names anywhere on the warehouse floor. Not like that. I quit that week. Salim transferred to day shift. He still keeps that notebook. I know because he sent me a photo once, just one page, where he'd written months later. Heard belt start by itself again. Story 5. The warehouse was technically temporary storage for a construction site, but it was really just a giant tent-like metal structure with roll-up doors, sitting alone at the edge of a cleared lot. Beyond it was woods, dense, second-growth trees with underbrush thick enough to hide anything. I was on night watch because the site had been hit by thieves. They'd stolen copper wire, tools, even a portable toilet once, which I still don't understand. So the company hired a local guy to sit in a truck and keep an eye on the storage building. That local guy was me. I remember 5 useless details before anything happened. The dashboard light on my old truck flickered when I hit the brakes. The thermos coffee I made tasted like cinnamon because I didn't rinse it properly. I had a small tear in my gloved thumb that made the cold seep in. There was a dead bug stuck inside the dome light cover. The radio only got one station and it played the same ad for a used car lot every hour. The storage building was quiet, no machinery running, no workers, just that big metal shell and the woods behind it. Around 1 a.m., the roll-up door on the side, one that was supposed to be chained shut, shivered, not moved, shivered like the metal was trembling. I got out, flashlight in hand, and checked the chain. It was still looped through, padlock intact. The door shouldn't have been able to move at all. I told myself it was wind. The weather had been gusty. I checked the trees. They weren't moving much. Then I heard a sound from inside the building. A soft scraping like something dragging across concrete. Slow, steady, I called out, "Hello!" like an idiot, even though I knew there shouldn't be anyone. My voice sounded too loud in the open lot. The scraping stopped. Then from inside, a voice answered me. It wasn't a scream, it wasn't a whisper, it was casual, like someone leaning close to a door. "Come in." My mouth went dry. I told myself it was a person, a thief. Maybe they'd gotten in another way. Maybe they were messing with me. I walked to the main roll-up door at the front and lifted it a few inches, just enough to shine my flashlight inside. The beam hit stacked pipes, wrapped lumber, pallets of concrete bags. Dust floated in the air like ash. Nothing moved, but the temperature change was immediate. Cold air poured out like a breath from a freezer. I stepped inside. The door rattled behind me, lowering slightly as if something tugged it. I spun and shoved it back up. It stayed. The scraping sound started again, deeper in the building, behind the stacks. I followed it because again, apparently I'm allergic to self-preservation. I rounded a stack of lumber and saw something crouched near the floor. At first I thought it was a worker, someone in a hoodie, but the posture was wrong. Too folded, too compact, like it had too many joints. It was chewing on something. The sound was wet and patient. I shined my flashlight on it. It looked up. Its face, if you can call it that, was like a person's face stretched too tight, with the features smoothed down as if someone had rubbed them with a thumb. The eyes were there, but they looked sealed over with a thin membrane. The mouth was a vertical slit that opened and closed like a fish gill. It tilted its head and I heard a crack like cartilage snapping. And then it spoke in my voice. "Come in." That was the iconic moment. Hearing my own voice come out of that slit mouth, perfectly matched, like it had recorded me. I backed away, stumbling over a pallet. My flashlight beam bounced, and for a second I saw what it had been chewing. It was a hard hat. Yellow, crushed inward, teeth marks around the rim. I ran. I didn't try to be strategic. I just ran for the door. Behind me I heard the scraping sound speed up, but it wasn't footsteps. It was something sliding along the floor, fast, like a heavy bag being pulled. I hit the main door, grabbed the bottom edge, and yanked. It didn't move. The roll-up mechanism jammed. I pulled harder, hands slipping. My heart was loud in my ears. Behind me the air shifted. That cold breath again. I turned. The thing was closer now, still low to the ground, sliding its arms, too long, too smooth, pulling it forward in quick jerks. It didn't rush, it didn't lunge. It just came steadily, like it knew I couldn't get out. Then from outside, my truck horn blared. One long blast. I froze. I hadn't hit the horn. No one else was there. The horn blared again. The thing stopped. Its head tilted toward the sound like it was listening. In that second, the roll-up door creaked and loosened, as if the jam released. I yanked and the door surged upward, letting in a wedge of night air and the distant sound of crickets. I dove out, scraping my elbows, and rolled in gravel. I scrambled to my truck and slammed the door, locking it even though locks feel stupid against things like that. The horn had stopped. The cab smelled like old coffee and sweat and vinyl. I looked back at the warehouse. The main door was still raised a foot from where I'd left it, like a mouth slightly open. Something pale moved in that gap, just a suggestion, then withdrew. The aftermath proof came when daylight hit and the site foreman arrived. I told him someone had been inside. I didn't describe the thing. I didn't say it spoke in my voice. I just said we needed to check. We went in together. The warehouse was normal. No cold breath, no scraping. But near the lumber stack, on the concrete floor, there was a smear of clear, sticky residue in the shape of a handprint, long fingers, too many joints. And stuck in it were tiny yellow paint chips from a hard hat. Story 6. I worked nights at a fulfillment warehouse where the aisles were numbered like streets, and if you stayed long enough, you could navigate them with your eyes half closed. It was all scanners and pick carts and that constant background hum of conveyor motors. My job was quality control. Basically, check orders, fix mistakes, retape boxes that looked suspicious. It sounds boring because it is until it is. I was alone in the QC cage most nights. The cage was just chain link fencing around a little workstation, meant to keep people from walking off with expensive returns. It made you feel like you were the one being stored. Before anything happened, I remembered dumb details. The click of my pen that I kept doing without noticing, the sour smell of someone's spilled energy drink in the corner, the way the tape gun always left a little string of adhesive on my fingers, the tiny fan under the desk that pushed warm air at my knees, the fact that the warehouse music playlist was stuck in a loop of early 2000s pop. Around 3 a.m., a return came in with no paperwork, just a box taped shut, sitting on my table like someone had placed it there carefully. That wasn't unusual. Returns were chaos, but I checked the incoming log and there was no scan for it, no record. I told myself someone forgot to scan, or the system glitched. The box was heavier than it should have been. Not heavy like electronics, heavy like wet laundry. There was no label, but there was something else. A strip of packing tape across the top with a single word written in blue ink. Listen. I stared at it longer than I should have. I'm not proud of that. Curiosity again, that stupid human need to push the bruise. I leaned close and put my ear near the cardboard. At first I heard nothing. Then faintly, like from far away, I heard warehouse sounds, footsteps, scanner beeps, distant voices. It sounded like my workplace, but wrong, like it was being played back through water. Then I heard my own voice laughing. I hadn't laughed all night. I pulled back, skin prickling, and told myself it was some kind of recorded device. A prank. A speaker inside. I grabbed my box cutter and sliced the tape. The tape peeled too easily, like it wasn't sticky. I opened the flaps. Inside was another box, smaller, same brown cardboard, same tape, same word written again. Listen, I felt my stomach drop. Like I just realized I was halfway down a staircase and there were more steps than I thought. I opened that one too, another box. Listen, I kept going. I don't know why. It felt automatic, like unwrapping something you can't stop unwrapping. Each box was perfectly centered inside the last, like nesting dolls. Finally, after maybe 6 or 7, I opened the smallest one. Inside wasn't a box, it was an ear. A human ear, pale, waxy looking, not bloody like it had been preserved. It sat in a bed of packing peanuts like it was fragile merchandise. I stared at it, brain refusing to accept what my eyes were giving me. Then the ear twitched, just once. A tiny muscle movement, like it heard something. That's my iconic moment. A loose ear listening. I slammed the box shut so hard the flaps bent. Behind me in the chain link cage wall, someone tapped. One tap, then another. Slow, deliberate, like code. I turned. Nobody was there. The warehouse floor outside the cage looked empty, long aisles disappearing into fluorescent distance. The tapping came again, this time from inside the cage on the metal post behind my chair. I stood so fast my stool fell backward. The ear inside the box started making a faint sound, like breathing but through cartilage. I grabbed the whole package, box and all, and shoved it into a plastic tote, snapping the lid closed like that would make it less real. I told myself I'd take it to the supervisor. I told myself I'd report it. I told myself a lot. But when I turned to leave the cage, the chain link gate was already closed. I hadn't closed it. I always left it unlatched when I was alone because I hated feeling trapped. The latch was down now, locked. And the tapping started outside the cage, moving along the fence line, circling me, not footsteps, just tapping like fingers on metal. I backed into the corner, keys in hand, and called out, "Hey!" trying to sound angry instead of scared. "This isn't funny." My voice echoed back from somewhere in the warehouse, but it didn't sound like an echo. It sounded like someone repeating me a half-second later, slightly off in tone. "Not funny," it repeated. Then, through the chain link, I saw a shape move between aisles. It wasn't fully visible, just a shoulder maybe and an arm that bent wrong, jointing backward. It stayed just out of the light like it understood the edges of brightness. I only saw it once, but I felt it the whole time. I don't know how long I stood there. Eventually, the warehouse playlist switched songs and the pop chorus made the moment feel so absurd I almost cried. Then the cage gate clicked open by itself. I didn't wait for permission. I ran. I didn't run out the main entrance. I ran to the employee bathroom and locked myself in a stall because small spaces feel safer even when they're not. I sat there until my phone showed 6:01 a.m. and day shift noise started swelling. Afterward, I went back to the QC cage with 2 supervisors and told them there was a suspicious package. I didn't mention ears. I don't know why. Shame maybe, fear of being laughed at. The tote was still there. Inside, the boxes were gone. Just loose packing peanuts and, sitting on top, my box cutter. The blade was extended fully and carved into the plastic handle, scratched deep like with a nail, was one word: listen. Story 7. The warehouse where I had my worst night wasn't active anymore. It was an old textile storage building that a friend of mine, Petra Dooling, was using as a cheap studio space for painting. It was technically off limits, but the owner didn't care as long as rent was paid. She invited me over one night because she didn't like being there alone after dark. I thought she was being dramatic. I brought snacks and a cheap bottle of wine like we were going to have some artsy hangout. Before anything, I remember ordinary things. The smell of turpentine and old fabric, Petra's space heater making a clicking noise as it warmed, the way my fingers got stained with charcoal from touching her sketchbook, the weirdly comforting sound of rain on a metal roof, the fact that the wine tasted like pennies because it was cheap. The building was divided into huge open bays with concrete pillars. Petra's studio was in one bay, cordoned off with hanging tarps. Beyond that, the warehouse was dark and full of abandoned machinery, covered in dusty sheets. Petra told me she'd been hearing someone walking in the building when she was alone. She said it sounded like bare feet on concrete. I told her it was rats or wind or the building settling. We were laughing about it actually when we heard it. Bare feet. Soft slap, 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 moving slow. Petra went still. "That," she whispered, "that's it." I felt my stomach tighten. I tried to rationalize immediately. "Maybe the owner," I said, even though it was late and there were no cars outside. We listened. The footsteps stopped just beyond the tarp line like whoever or whatever was there didn't want to step into her lit area. Petra grabbed my arm. Her fingers were cold. "Don't call out," she whispered. Of course, my instinct was to call out, to make it human, to force it into a shape I could understand. But her fear was contagious and I kept quiet. Then, from the darkness, a voice spoke. It wasn't threatening, it was almost shy. "Petra." Petra's whole body flinched. "No," she breathed. "No." I whispered, "Is someone messing with you?" She shook her head hard. "No one says my name like that." A voice repeated Petra, but with a different inflection, like it was trying out the sound. Then it said my name, not shouted, not whispered, just spoken, close enough that I felt it in my neck hairs. That was when I stopped trying to be logical. I grabbed the flashlight from Petra's table and swept the beam across the tarp opening. For a second, the light caught something standing just outside, not fully in the beam, like it was leaning away from it, but enough that I saw its legs. They were human legs. Bare, pale, but the knees were backward. The joints bent the wrong way, like a bird's legs, except the skin was smooth and human. That's the iconic image for this story. Backward knees under a tarp edge. The thing stepped back silently and the footsteps resumed, moving away but not leaving, circling. Petra started crying silently, angry tears. "It does that," she whispered. "It learns." We didn't run right away. We packed in this frantic, clumsy way, stuffing paints into boxes, unplugging cords, knocking things over, because leaving felt like admitting we were scared, and also because Petra didn't want to leave her work behind. The footsteps got closer, then farther, then closer again. At one point, the tarp billowed inward as if someone brushed against it from the other side. I held my breath. A handprint appeared on the tarp, pressing from the darkness. Fingers long but human-shaped. Then the tarp relaxed and the handprint vanished. We finally decided to go. We turned off the space heater, grabbed our bags, and headed for the main exit. The warehouse beyond Petra's Bay was so dark the flashlight beam felt swallowed. Rain hammered the roof. The air smelled like wet rust. Halfway to the exit, the flashlight flickered. Petra hissed, "Don't." I wanted to turn around. I don't know why. Some stupid urge to look. I did anyway. Behind us in the darkness, the tarps in Petra's Bay were moving as if someone was walking through them, but there was no visible body, just the fabric shifting, parting, settling. And then from inside the tarps, we heard Petra's own voice laughing, the exact laugh she'd made earlier. Petra made this broken sound like a sob swallowed. We ran. The exit door was a heavy metal thing with a push bar, and it stuck at first. Of course it did. I shoved harder, shoulder slamming, and it popped open, letting in cold rain air. We burst outside into the parking lot. The rain felt like needles. Petra fumbled her keys, dropped them, cursed. I scanned the warehouse windows, expecting to see a silhouette. Instead, in the big loading bay opening, I saw the tarp from Petra's studio hanging in the doorway like a curtain, even though it had been deep inside the building. And pressed against it from behind was the outline of a person standing upright, human proportions, except the head was too high, like the neck was stretched. The outline leaned forward slightly, and Petra's voice called out again, cheerful now. "Wait up." We didn't wait. The aftermath proof was in Petra's car the next day. She called me, voice hoarse, and told me to come over. On her passenger seat, among the paint tubes and brushes she'd thrown in, was a strip of tarp fabric, like it had been torn cleanly from the hanging curtain. Neither of us had torn it, and on it, in faint smudged charcoal, was a perfect handprint with backward-bending thumb, like the joint was reversed. Story 8. I did inventory for a grain storage warehouse out in the middle of nowhere, the kind of place that feels like it's been abandoned even when it's active. Metal silos outside, warehouse inside, dust everywhere. The air always tasted like dry cereal. I was there overnight because the company wanted a full count done before trucks arrived at dawn. They offered overtime and I said yes because I'm weak. I was alone except for a guy on radio named Brenner Quill, who was supposed to be in the office up front doing paperwork. We weren't close friends or anything, but he was talkative, which helps at night. Before anything happened, the dust on my eyelashes, the way my throat got scratchy no matter how much water I drank, the squeak of my clipboard clip, the smell of stale grain that clung to my clothes, the fact that I kept finding pennies on the floor near the old scales, like people had been dropping them for years. Around 2:40 a.m., the dust started falling in a steady sprinkle, even though there was no wind and no machinery running. It drifted down like dry snow. I told myself it was vibration from a passing truck. Then from somewhere in the warehouse, I heard a low humming, not a tune, just a sustained hum like someone holding one note. I radioed Brenner. "You humming?" I asked. He laughed. "No, why would I be humming?" The hum continued. The dust falling grew heavier. I looked up at the rafters and saw something moving along the beams. At first I thought it was a person crawling, then I saw it wasn't a person. The movement was too smooth, like sliding. My flashlight beam caught it for 1 second. It was a long, pale shape, like a stretched body without clear limbs, and along its underside were dozens of small dangling shapes that moved like fingers. It clung to the rafters upside down, moving like a centipede made of skin. I froze. My mouth tasted like grain dust and panic. The hum shifted, becoming a vibration I could feel in my teeth. Then the iconic moment, one of the dangling finger things let go of the rafter, reached down and gently tapped the top of a grain sack as if it was checking what was inside. The tap made a hollow thunk. I backed up slow. The thing above me shifted, following. I radioed Brenner again, whispering, "Now get out here, something is." The radio crackled, then Brenner's voice came through but stretched, slowed like a tape warped. "Get out here." I stopped speaking. My throat tightened. The humming grew louder and the sacks around me began to tremble, not from vibration in the floor, from within the sacks like the grain inside was stirring. I ran. I didn't run toward the office. I ran toward the nearest exit door on the side wall because my brain just wanted outside air. The door was locked. I hammered the push bar. Nothing. It was one of those emergency exits, alarmed and chained, and I'd forgot. I spun, scanning for another route. Above me, the pale body shifted lower and dust poured off it in sheets. The dangling finger things reached down, not grabbing, just tapping. Tap, tap, tap on sacks, on pallets, on metal rails. The taps sounded like someone drumming softly with knuckles. I sprinted toward the office area, coughing, eyes watering from dust. I saw Brenner's office door open at the far end. Relief hit me so hard it almost made me laugh. Brenner stepped out. Except it was Brenner. Not fully. It wore his coveralls, but his head was tilted too far to one side, like the neck couldn't hold it straight. And his mouth opened too wide, jaw dropping farther than human joints should allow. It hummed. I stopped dead. "Brenner," I managed. It kept humming and the sound vibrated in my bones. It took one step toward me and the fluorescent light above it flickered in time with the hum. I turned and ran past the office, past the break room, toward the front loading bay where the big doors were. I heard tapping behind me, now on the floor like the finger things had dropped down. I didn't look back. I just ran until I hit the front bay door and shoved it open, stumbling into night air. Outside, the sky was that deep pre-dawn blue. The wind smelled clean compared to grain dust. I ran to my car, hands shaking so bad I could barely get the key in. Behind me, from inside the warehouse, the humming stopped abruptly. Silence. Then, from the open bay, Brenner's voice called out, normal now, "Hey, where you going?" I didn't answer. I drove. The aftermath proof came later that day when my supervisor called, furious, asking why I'd left the count unfinished. I tried to explain, but words sounded stupid. He said, "Well, we found your clipboard." I hadn't taken it. I dropped it somewhere in the warehouse. He described it. The paper was covered in grain dust, and on top of the dust, pressed into it, were dozens of tiny oval indentations in a cluster, like fingertips had been drumming on it. Story 9. The last warehouse story is the one I tell people when they say, "It's just a building." Because sometimes a building isn't just a building. Sometimes it feels like a throat. I took a temporary job doing overnight cleanup at a warehouse that had been shut down for renovation. No inventory, no staff, just me and the hum of emergency lights. The place was empty enough that my footsteps sounded like someone else's. My contact was a contractor named Winthrop Gale, who handed me a keycard and told me which areas to avoid because of exposed wiring. He didn't say anything spooky. He just looked tired. Before the supernatural part, here are the boring details I still remember. The smell of fresh paint mixing with old dust, my mop bucket squeaking on one wheel, the way my phone battery drained faster in there, the fact that the water fountain tasted metallic, the little pile of dead flies in a corner that had probably been there for years. I was mopping near the old shipping office when I noticed the ceiling tiles above me were slightly displaced, like someone had pushed them up and they hadn't settled back. I told myself it was renovation work. Someone forgot to fix it. Then I heard something from up there. A slow, dragging sound like fabric across insulation. I stood still, mop dripping. The dragging stopped. Then a single droplet fell from the ceiling tile seam onto the floor. It wasn't water, it was thick, clear, and it held shape for a second like gel. I stared at it and my stomach sank. I backed away, rationalizing condensation mixed with paint. Construction residue. Another droplet fell. Then from the ceiling tile seam something lowered down slowly like a strand. At first I thought it was a wire, but it moved like muscle. It was pale and segmented like a tendon, and at the end was a small rounded bulb that opened into a ring of tiny teeth, not sharp teeth, more like the rough little teeth inside a lamprey mouth. It hovered inches above the gel droplet like it was tasting the air. That's the iconic moment. A ceiling tendon ending in a tooth ring searching. I stepped back and my shoe squeaked on wet floor. The tendon snapped upward so fast it blurred, disappearing into the ceiling. Tiles shifted slightly as something moved above them, traveling away. I stood there, mop handle clenched, and told myself, rodents, pipes, something normal, something that fits in the world. Then my keycard, clipped to my belt, beeped once, like it had been scanned. No one was near me. I looked at the shipping office door. The keycard reader light blinked green. The door clicked open. Slowly, the door swung inward, revealing the dark office beyond. My flashlight beam cut into it, showing desks covered in plastic sheets, a chair on its side, paperwork scattered like dead leaves. From inside the office, someone spoke. Not a voice I recognized, not mine, not anyone's. It said calmly, like a coworker calling you over, "Come look." I didn't. I backed away, step by step, keeping my light on the open doorway. Something moved inside the office, behind the plastic sheet draped over a desk. The sheet rose as if a body stood beneath it, pushing upward. Then the sheet sank, and whatever was under it moved toward the door, dragging the plastic along the floor with a whispering sound. I turned and ran. I didn't run to the main exit because it was far. I ran to the nearest stairwell that led up to a mezzanine with an emergency exit. The stairwell door slammed behind me, and I leaned against it, panting, listening. For a few seconds, nothing. Then the keycard reader on the stairwell door beeped. Green light. The door handle moved, not violently, not yanked, just turned slowly, patiently, as if someone on the other side had all the time in the world. I stumbled up the stairs, shoes slipping on metal steps, my lungs burned, the air smelled like paint and fear. At the top, the emergency exit bar was chained because renovation. I hit it anyway, rattling chain, cursing. Below me, the stairwell door opened with a soft click. I heard plastic whispering on concrete again. I didn't see the thing fully. I only saw it once, and I'll keep it short like my brain keeps it short. It was a shape that didn't have a clear outline, like a body made of overlapping sheets, and it moved upward not by steps but by sliding, as if gravity was optional. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed the fire alarm pull station at the top of the stairs and yanked it. The alarm blared. Red strobes flashed. The sound was so loud it hurt. The shape below paused, as if the noise confused it. I bolted back down the stairs, past it, past something cold and smelling faintly like wet plaster, and ran for the main exit. The alarm seemed to fill the whole building like a flood. I got out. I didn't stop running until I was in my car with the doors locked. I sat there shaking, watching the warehouse through the windshield as the alarm strobes flashed inside like a heartbeat. The aftermath proof came 2 days later when Winthrop called, angry about the fire alarm incident. I tried to explain, but again, it sounded ridiculous. He sighed and said, "We checked the stairwell." Then he went quiet. "What?" I asked. He said, "There are bite marks on the ceiling tiles, like something chewed perfect circles. And I don't know, there's gel on the floor, we can't clean it. It keeps coming back." I didn't go back. I didn't even ask for my last check. I just let it go. Sometimes late at night when I'm alone in a quiet room, I'll hear a soft dragging above me, something like fabric on insulation, and my whole body tenses, waiting for the ceiling to open like a mouth. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments which story unsettled you most, and share this with your friends who love a good scare. Until next time, stay safe out there.